君にもウルトラの星がずっと見えるようになったか。
消えないよ。今度は消えないよ。北斗さん、俺はウルトラ6番目の兄弟になったんだね。
Wow, that didn't last long. Here we are, the 5th Ultraman series, 6th Ultra Brother, and 7th entry in the overall Ultra franchise. At this point, the franchise had come a long way since the more sci-fi oriented shows of the late 60s and even early 70s. While the franchise was never above having fun, '70s Ultra was a different story. If Return of Ultraman cracked the door open to a new era, and Ultraman Ace kicked that door open, Ultraman Taro ripped it off its hinges and rode it down a mountain. Apparently, Ultraman Taro was envisioned as the fairy tale of the Ultra series, and at one point was to be named Ultraman Jack, a nod to the Western fairy tales like Jack and the Giant Beanstalk or Jack the Giant Killer. And just in case you weren't aware, this was before the hero introduced in Return of Ultraman was named Jack. That wouldn't come until the 80s. Anyway, Ultraman Taro is a show which prioritizes entertainment. It offers a wild array of tones and narratives, everything from what feels like a television adaptation of Ishiro Honda's Matango to stories that openly invoke Japanese folklore. The first episode, with its hyperactive action and almost Looney Tunes style physics, is a fantastic preview of a lot of the insanity that follows over the course of the show's 53 episode run between 1973 and 1974. But without further ado, here's a few interesting things about the longest running early Ultra series. Return of Ultraman seems to have laid the groundwork for the rest of the Showa Ultraman shows, and Ultraman Taro embraces the influence wholeheartedly. To name a few examples, in Return of Ultraman, Ultraman Jack was gifted the Ultra Bracelet by Ultra 7. In Ultraman Taro, the titular character is given a bracelet by a new addition to the Ultra family, Mother of Ultra. Also, back is the idea of the lead character, Kotaro Higashi in this case, having a child companion, and a love interest who is also the sister or guardian of said child companion. This domestic angle was something properly established in Return of Ultraman, eventually revisited in Ultraman Ace, and is back in Ultraman Taro from the start. Return of Ultraman was also the first series to consistently incorporate children into its storylines, and so far that has been kept intact, but Ultraman Taro takes it to new levels. As implied, Ultraman Taro features a lot of child characters. It was one of the ways Tsuburaya Productions sought to win back younger audiences following Ultraman Ace and its weaker ratings compared to Return of Ultraman. The children are normally tied into the plot by being friends with Kenichi, the main child character of the show. Not only is he an improvement over Dan, he's a fairly likable character in his own right, and works well with Kotaro, rivaling the effectiveness of Go and Jiro's relationship in Return of Ultraman. This charismatic social butterfly gets a lot of screen time, enough towards the midpoint to rival Kotaro as the lead of the show. In some episodes, he's basically the main character, and Kotaro is more of a background element, but a number of other children get to be the focal points of entire episodes as well. One example of this is episode 36, which stars Tomonori Yasuki, best known to tokusatsu fans as Ichiro from the 1969 Godzilla film, All Monsters Attack. Episode 36 feels like a spiritual successor to the aforementioned film, having Yasuki once again getting chased around a building by adults meaning to do him harm, and the chase here is far more sinister than the one from the earlier Godzilla film. Speaking of Godzilla, in case you haven't noticed, Kotaro's actor Saburo Shinoda would later play authority figures in the 90s Godzilla films. A few other Ultra alumni did the same, and while on this note, Ultraman Taro is a bit of a revolving door when it comes to its cast and characters. A different actress takes over for Saori, characters get replaced by different characters, and characters disappear without comment. It's hard not to notice and can be a little irritating. Moving along, Ultraman Taro pushes the expanded universe concept harder than any series before it, featuring numerous guest appearances and giving viewers their first look at the Land of Light. A lot different than it would look in future installments. Episodes 27 to 30 are devoted to the return of characters from the previous 4 mainline Ultra shows. Staying true to the greater push for an expanded universe, the show does acknowledge that these monsters once troubled past Ultraman, and in Benstar's case, stock footage is used to further connect the dots and is presented as in-universe material. Who recorded this footage, how they did it, and how Zack got their hands on it remains a mystery. Sadly, these episodes can be hit and miss. Plus, the execution of these returning characters leave a lot to be desired, and they usually feel forced into unrelated narratives rather than starring in organic continuations of earlier storylines. In some cases, that was apparently exactly what happened. A better crossover is one that brings back all the previous Ultraman hosts. In this two-parter, the brothers work together to teach the 6th Ultra Brother the value of both independence and teamwork. In another major crossover, the heroes take turns attempting to prevent an alien named Tyrant from reaching Earth. Each battle is accompanied by a montage showcasing its respective heroes' previous fights. Tyrant defeats the other heroes a little too quickly for how easily Taro ends up vanquishing the villain. Nevertheless, it's an entertaining episode and has a touching subplot about Kataro helping a kid learn how to ride a bicycle. And that leads to the next point. Yep, don't let the cartoon physics or bizarre monster designs distract from just how serious this show can get at times. Here are a few highlights. A whole 26 years before Gamera 3 would explore similar territory, episode 38 features a troubled orphan girl. Not only did her parents die in an apartment complex, it's presented as a flashback, and said deaths are collateral from a battle involving a giant flying turtle. But speaking of preempting Gamera, episode 43, another episode starring Tomonori Yazaki, has a lot in common with Gamera the Brave. A child raising a monster in secret before it quickly grows to massive size? Check. A dysfunctional father and son relationship? Check. A dead mother? Check. And the father owning a shop? Check. Next is the Birdon 3-parter, an emotional roller coaster. Kenichi mourns the assumed death of Kataro while defending Kataro's unfairly tarnished reputation. Birdon puts Taro out of commission and ruthlessly kills Zophie. Finally, there's family drama involving a young boy who loses his eyesight. The events of these episodes prove challenging for him and his family, yet, whether it be in life or death, he wants nothing more than for his family to be together. Another episode features an exceptionally talented young man who has to deal with the burden of being ahead of everyone else, and maintaining the image that comes with that. It's a moving episode that reminds viewers that it's okay to depend on others, and for men to express emotions. In another episode, after witnessing man's potential for cruelty, an alien prince sets out to destroy the human race and berates Ultraman Taro for defending what he perceives to be a terrible people. Last but not least, episodes 24 and 25, another two-parter, are about a family of children nicknamed the Ultra Brothers who deal with the loss of their parents, the eldest sibling almost dying in a car accident, and the end of the world. Yeah, this show can get intense at times. But the drama isn't limited to the human characters. There's plenty of it involving monsters too. A lot of sympathy is shown towards them, and usually in storylines that depict them to be the victims of circumstance or human aggression. Zat, the latest in Earth defense forcing, does its best to avoid conflict whenever possible. Such is the case in episodes 4 and 5, where Zat has to deal with the consequences that result from poachers stealing the eggs of peaceful giant turtles. Correctly noting that the creatures weren't harming anyone until they were deliberately disturbed, Zat refuses to partake in exterminating the turtles once they return home. In another episode, working on the assumption that it will die within a week, Zat settles with letting a giant moth live peacefully. Unfortunately, civilians quickly grow frustrated with its noises and provoke it to anger with their attempts to kill it. Ultraman Taro displays similar forgiveness, allowing some monsters to escape with their lives on more than a few occasions, making him a far more compassionate hero than some of his predecessors often were. But when fights are unavoidable, the franchise continues to wow with its stellar fight scenes and creative camera work, perhaps some of the best at this point in the franchise. Also, there's a lot of interactions between human characters and monsters, meaning there's a lot of composite work and use of large props, more than any other Ultraman show up to this point. Characters frequently climb or battle monsters with their bare hands, and this is usually when the show is at its goofiest. Out of context, this stuff would be wild, but the same can be said about pretty much everything else in the show. So, All in all, Ultraman Taro is a fine entry in the long-running franchise. At first glance, its goofier sensibilities and garish aesthetics of its monster attack team might be off-putting, more so than usual with Tokusatsu. Still, if given a chance, There is a lot to appreciate, and at this point in the franchise, an Ultra show hasn't been this consistently good since Ultra 7. Return of Ultraman might have greater heights, but Ultraman Taro doesn't really have the lows of that show or Ultraman Ace. It's an odd yet fun and charming time, and one of my favorite Ultra series thus far.